Chui. Owie. Snore. More snoring. Snore. Snore, snore, snore. All I hear is snoring. Snoring. Snore. As he snores. All my puppies do is snore. Ow. I found a portal to hell. This does go straight down to hell. Yippee! Technically, the Nether is hell, but boink. Oh, come on, God. Ah, corner. Boink. How's my inventory looking? Looks fun. Oh no, I'm out of sticks. Slaying my enemy. My enemy escapes blood. Boink. Boink. Stagites. Stagmite Cove. Sweet. Help, I'm lost. I don't know where I've been. Creepy noises are following me. Well, answer no. Ah, fuck me in the butt cheeks. Fuck me in the butt cheeks. Fuck me in the butt cheeks. Yeah. What the fuck was that? Electromagnetic interference gun Popeye. Look, another open area. Let's go. That's not fucking scary. There's a solid sword. Any other texture pack? I'm lost as hell. Anyways, I'm not exploring any more of this. Stop making noises! Rawr. That's an indie man. It's an Enderman. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Ow. I almost looked at the Enderman and lost it all. Stop snoring! Welcome. Nyama nyama. Stop snoring. Elevate your head. There you go. Stay in your cubby hole. I don't know where I am. I don't know where I am. I am lost and almost out of torches. Oh well. As long as my pickaxe doesn't break. I mean, I have another one. Mouse, what are you doing? Hey, stop. Your idea to leave the leave. There you go. You're free. Have fun. Freedom! Freedom! Free! Free at last! I honestly only came down here for one thing. Iron. Because iron doesn't... You make too much noise. You make too much noise. No. It's 3 stacks almost. Yeah. Almost 3 stacks of iron. Holy crap. No! almost fucking died. I don't know where the fuck I was going. Where's water now? Oh, this is the water I saw. Okay. On my way back home to a place where the sun sets. Why does that not grow? I love CC. One stick. Two sticks. And now we wait. Mocha, you snore any louder. So, good news, my father's getting out of the hospital today. Oh my god, can you text that thing? Mocha, snore louder. Do it, snore louder. It's called you Snorlax. Snorlax! Snorlax! Why am I putting bone meals, and spring in the ore chest? Because they're precious to me. Oh, Bill. The tree crew, the tree crew. Okay, so what's gonna happen is these walls are about to be destroyed. This entire area is about to be cleared out. This is gonna be all cleared out. Do I have a pickaxe? I need 3 pickaxes. Mocha! Mocha, guess what? Mocha, guess what? Daddy's coming home! Mocha doesn't care. I'm just like, sleeping. So, the fuck does that count? This goes down a deep slide. I put a water elevator so I can get up and down fast. Come here, PC. In you go, PC. Okay, so I need a crap ton of wood. I need this and this, and then that's that. I mean, I still haven't finished building this yet. Will you stop snoring so loud? Sorry. I love snoring. I love snoring.
can I join?
Depends. What kind of player are you? I apologize for my dog snoring. Ah, puppies, doggies, hugs.
Great might was given to him by Ilúvatar, and he was co-evil with Manwë. In the powers and knowledge of all the other Valar he had part, but he turned them to evil purposes and squandered his strength in violence and tyranny. He coveted Arthur and all of it, desiring the kingship of Manwë and dominion over the realms of his peers. From splendor he fell to arrogance and contempt for all things save himself, a spirit wasteful and pitiless. Understanding, he turned to subtlety and perverting to his own will all that he would use, until he became a liar without shame. He began with a desire of light, but when he could not possess it for himself alone, he descended through fire and wrath into a great burning down into darkness. And darkness he used most in his evil works upon Arthur, and filled it with fear for all living things. ages forgotten, he contended with Manwë and all the Valar, and through long years Alba held dominion over most of the lands of the earth. But he was not alone. For of the Maiar, many were drawn to his splendor in the days of his greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness. And others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. Among those of his servants that have names, the greatest was that spirit whom the Eldar called Sauron, or Gorthar the Cruel. In his beginning, he was of the Maiar of Aul, and he remained mighty in the lore of Akin. In all the deeds of Melkor the Morlord upon Arda, in his vast works and in the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master in that for long he served another and not himself. But in after years he rose like a shadow of Morgoth, and a ghost of his malice, and walked behind him on the same ruinous path down into the void. Here ends the Valaquenta. Quenta Silmarillion, the history of the Silmarils. Chapter 1 of the beginning of days. It is told among the wise that the first war began before Arda was full shaped, and ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon earth. And for long Melkor had the upper hand. But in the midst of the war, a spirit of great strength and hardihood came to the aid of the Valar, hearing in the far heaven that there was battle in the middle kingdom. And Arda was filled with the sound of his laughter. So came Tulkas the Strong, whose anger passes like a mighty wind, scattering cloud and darkness before it, and Melkor fled before his wrath and his laughter, and forsook Arda. And there was peace for a long age. And Tulkas remained and became one of the Valar for the kingdom of Arda. But Melkor brooded in the outer darkness, and his hate was given to Tulkas forever after. In that time, the Valar brought order to the seas and the lands and the mountains, and Yavanna planted at last the seed which she had long devised. And since, when the fires were subdued or buried beneath the primeval hills, there was need of light, Aule, at the prayer of Yavanna, wrought 2 mighty lamps for the lighting of the middle earth, which he had built amid the encircling seas. Then Varda filled the lamps, and Manwë hallowed them, and the Valar set them upon high pillars more lofty far than are any mountains of the later days. One lamp they raised near to the north of Middle-earth, and it was named Luin, and the other was raised in the south, and it was named Orman. And the light of the lamps of the Valar flowed out over the earth, so that all was lit, as it were, in a changeless day. Then the seeds that Yavanna had sown began swiftly to sprout and to burgeon, and there arose a multitude of growing things, great and small, mosses and grasses, and great ferns and trees, whose tops were crowned with cloud as they were living mountains, but whose feet were wrapped in a green twilight. And beasts came and dwelt in the grassy plains, or in the rivers and the lakes, or walked in the shadows of the woods. As yet no flower had bloomed, bird and sun, for these things waited still their time in the bosom of Yavan. But wealth there was for her imagining, and nowhere more rich than in the midmost parts of the earth, where the light of both the lamps met. And there upon the isle of Almer and the great lake was the first dwelling of the Valar, when all things were young, and new-made green was yet a marvel in the eyes of the makers, and they were Now it came to pass that while the Valar rested from their labours and watched the growth and unfolding of the things that they had devised and begun, Manwë ordained a great feast, and the Valar and all their host came to it. But Aule and Tulkas were weary, for the craft of Aule and the strength of Tulkas had been at the service of all without ceasing in the days of their labour. And Melkor knew of all that was done, for even then he had secret friends and spies among the Valar, whom he had converted to his cause, and far off in the darkness he was filled with hatred, being jealous of the work of his peers, whom he desired to make subject to himself. Therefore he gathered to himself spirits out of the halls of the air that he had perverted to his service, and he deemed himself strong. And seeing now his time, he drew near again to Arthur, and looked down upon it, and the beauty of the earth in its spring filled him the more with hate. Now therefore the Valar were gathered upon Almen, fearing no evil, and because of the light of the moon, they did not perceive the shadow in the north that was cast from afar by Melkor, for he was grown dark as the night of before. And it is sung in that feast of the spring of Arthur, Tulkas espoused Nessa, the sister of Manwë, and she danced before the Valar upon the green grass of Almer. Then Tulkas slept, being weary and content, and Melkor deemed that his hour had come. And he passed, therefore, over the walls of the night with his host, and came to Middle-earth far to the north, and the Valar were not aware. Now Melkor began the delving and building of a vast fortress, deep under earth, beneath dark mountains, where the beams of Iluin were cold and dim. That stronghold was named Utumno. And though the Valar knew naught of it as yet, nonetheless, the evil of Melkor and the blight of his hatred flowed out thence, and the spring of Arthur was marred. Green things fell sick and rotted, and rivers were choked with weeds and slime, and fens were made rank and poisonous, the breeding place of flies. The forests grew dark and perilous, the haunts of fear, and beasts became monsters of horn and ivory, and dyed the earth with blood. Then the Valar knew indeed that Melkor was at work again, and they sought for his hiding place. But Melkor, trusting in the strength of Utumno and the might of his servants, came forth suddenly to war, and struck the first blow, ere the Valar were prepared, and he assailed the lights of Iluin and Ormal, and cast down their pillars and broke their lamps. In the overthrow of the mighty pillars, lands were broken and seas arose in tumult. And when the lamps were spilled, destroying flame was poured out over the earth, and the shape of Arthur, and the symmetry of its waters, and its lands was marred in that time, so that the first designs of the Valar were never after restored. In the confusion and the darkness, Melkor escaped, though fear fell upon above the roaring of the seas, he heard the voice of Manwe as a mighty wind, and the earth trembled beneath the feet of Tulkas. But he came to Vitrullo, ere Tulkas could overtake him, and there he lay hid. And the Valar could not at that time overcome him, for the greater part of their strength was needed to restrain the tumults of the earth, and to save from ruin all that could be saved of their labor, and afterwards to rend the earth again, until they knew where the children of Ilúvatar were dwelling, who were yet to come, in a time that was hidden from the Valar. Thus ended the spring of Arthur. The dwelling of the Valar upon the Almaden was utterly destroyed, and they had no abiding place upon the face of the earth. Therefore they departed from Middle-earth, and went to the land of Aman, the westernmost of all lands upon the borders of the world, for its west shores looked upon the outer sea, that is called by the elves Ekaya, encircling the kingdom of Arthur. How wide is that sea none know but the Valar, and beyond it are the walls of the night. But the east shores of Aman were the uttermost end of Belagir, the great sea of the west. And since Melkor was returned to Middle-earth, and they could not yet overcome him, the Valar fortified their dwelling, and upon the shores of the sea they raised the Pelori, the mountains of Aman, highest upon earth. And above all the mountains of the Pelori was that height upon whose summit Manwe set his throne. Taniquetil, the elves named that holy mountain, and Oyolosse, everlasting whiteness, and Elerina, crowned with stars, and many names beside. But the Sindar spoke of it in their later tongue as Amon Uyos. From their halls upon Taniquetil, Manwe and Varda could look out across the earth, even into the furthest east. Behind the walls of the Pelori, the Valar established their domain in that region which is called Valinor, and there were their houses, their gardens, and their towns. In that guarded land, the Valar gathered great store of light, and all the fairest things that were saved from the ruin. And many others, yet fairer, they made anew, and Valinor became more beautiful even than Middle-earth in the spring of Arthur. And it was blessed, for the deathless dwelt there, and there naught faded nor withered, neither was there any stain upon flower or leaf in that land, nor any corruption or sickness in anything that lived. For the very stones and waters were hallowed. And when Valinor was full wrought, and the mansions of the Valar were established, in the midst of the plain beyond the mountains, they built their city, Valmar, of many bells. Before its western gate there was a green mound, Ezelohar, that is named also Coralaida, and Yavanna, and she sat there long upon the green grass, and sang a song of power, in which was set all her thought of things that grow in the earth. But Niena thought in silence, and watered the mound with tears. In that time the Valar were gathered together to hear the song of Yavanna, and they sat silent upon their thrones of council in Mahanatsar, the ring of doom, near to the golden gates of Valma. And Yavanna Kementari sang before them, and they watched. And as they watched, upon the mound there came forth two slender shoots, and silence was over all the world in that hour, nor was there any other sound save the chanting of Yavanna. Under her sway, the saplings grew and became fair and tall, and came to flower, and thus there awoke in the world the two trees of Valinor. Of all things which Yavanna made, they had most renown, and about their fate all the tales of the elder days are woven. The one had leaves of dark green that beneath were as shining silver, and from each of his countless flowers a dew of silver light was ever falling, and the earth beneath was dappled with the shadows of his fluttering leaves. The other bore leaves of a young green, like the new opened beech. Their edges were of glittering gold. Flowers swung upon her branches in clusters of yellow flame, formed each to a glowing horn that spilled a golden rain about the ground. And from the blossom of there came forth warmth and a great light. Pelion, the one was called in Valinor, and Sinfion, and Minqualote, and many others. But Laurelin the others, and Malinalda, and Kuluri, and many names in song beside. In 7 hours the glory of each tree waxed to full and waned again to naught, and each awoke once more to life an hour before the other ceased to shine. Thus, in Valinor, twice every day there came a gentle hour, with softer light than both trees were full, and the gold and silver beams were mingled. The elder and came first to full stature of the bloom, and that first hour in which he shone, the white glimmer of a silver dawn, the Valar reckoned not into the 12 hours, but named it the opening hour, and counted from it the ages of their reign in Valinor. Therefore, at the 6th hour of the first day, and of all the joyful days thereafter, until the darkening of Valinor, Pelion ceased his time of flower, and at the 12th hour flowers were blossoming. And each day of the Valar in the Anna contained 12 hours, and ended with the second morning of the month, in which Laurelin proclaimed that Telperion was waxing, that the light that was spilled from the trees endured long ere it was taken up into the air or sent down into the earth. And the dews of Telperion and the rain fell from Laurelin, Varda poured it in great vats like shining lakes that were to all the land of the Valar as wells of water and of light. Thus began the days of the bliss of Valinor, and thus began also the countless life. But as the ages drew on to the hour appointed by Ilúvatar for the coming of the first king, Little Earth lay in a twilight beneath the stars that Varda had wrought in the ages forgotten of her labours in Ea. And in the darkness Melkor dwelt, and still often walked abroad in many shapes of power and fear, and he wielded coal and fire from the tops of the mountains to the deep furnaces there beneath. And whatsoever was cruel or violent or deadly in those days is laid to his charge. From the beauty and bliss of Valinor, the Valar came seldom over the mountains to Middle-earth, but gave to the land beyond the Pelin their care and their love. And in the midst of the blessed realm were the mansions of Aul, and there he laboured long. For in the making of all things in that land he had the chief part, and he wrought there many beautiful and shapely works, both openly and in secret. Of him comes the law and knowledge of the earth, and of all things of its beginning. Whether the Lord of those that know not, that seek only for the understanding of what is, or the Lord of all craftsmen, the weaver, the shaper of wood, and the worker in metal, and the tiller, and husbandman also, though these last and all yield the things that grow of them, must convey so to the spouse of Aule, Yavanna Elementai. Aule it is who is named the friend of the Noldor, for of him they learned much in Arthedain, and they are the most skilled of the elves, and in their own fashion, according to the gifts which Iluvatar gave to them, they added much to his teaching, delighting in tongues and in scripts, and in the figures of broidery, of drawing, and of carving. The Noldor also it was who first achieved the making of gems, and the fairest of all gems were the Silmarils, and they are lost. But Manwë Sulimo, highest and holiest of the Valar, sat upon the borders of Aman, forsaking not in his spirit the outer lands, for his throne was set in majesty upon the pinnacle of Taniquetil, the highest of the mountains of the world, standing upon the margin of the sea. Spirits in the shape of hawks and eagles flew ever to and from his halls, and their eyes could see to the depths of the sea and pierce the hidden caverns beneath the world. Thus they brought word to him of well nigh all that passed in Arda. Yet some things were hidden even from the eyes of Manwë and the servants of Manwë. For where Melkor sat in his dark vault, impenetrable shadows lay. Manwë has no thought for his own honor, and is not jealous of his power, but rules all with peace. The Vanya he loved best of all the elves, and of him they received song and poetry. For poetry is the delight of Manwë, and the song of words is his music. His raiment is blue, and blue is the fire of his eyes, and his scepter is of sapphire, which the Noldor wrought for him, and he was appointed to be the vice-regent of Iluvatar, king of the world of Valar and elves and men, and the chief defense against the evil of Melkor. In Manwë dwelt Varda, the most beautiful, she who in the Sindarin tongue is named Helve, queen of the Valar, maker of the stars, and with them were a great host of spirits in blessings. But Ulmo was alone, and he abode not in Valinor, nor ever came thither, unless there were need for a great council. He dwelt from the beginning of Arda in the outer ocean, and still he dwells there. Thence he governs the flowing of all waters, and the ebbing, the courses of all rivers, and the replenishment of springs, the distilling of all dews, and rain in every land beneath the sky. In the deep places he gives thought to music great and terrible, and the echo of that music runs through all the veins of the world in sorrow and in joy. For if joyful is the fountain that rises in the sun, its springs are in the wells of sorrow, unfathomed at the foundations of the earth. The Teleri learned much of Ulmo, and for this reason their music has both sadness and enchantment. Salmar came with him to Arda, he who made the horns of Ulmo that none may ever forget who once has heard them, and Osseth and Uinen also, to whom he gave the government of the waves and the movements of the inner seas, and many other spirits besides. And thus it was by the power of Ulmo that even under the darkness of Melkor, life coursed still through many secret lodes, and the earth did not die. And to all who were lost in that darkness, or wandered far from the light of the Valar, the ear of Ulmo was ever open. Nor has he ever forsaken Middle-earth, and whatsoever may since have befallen of ruin or of change, he has not ceased to take thought for it, and will not until the end of days. And in that time of dark, Yavanna also was unwilling utterly to forsake the outer lands, for all things that grow are dear to her, and she mourned for the works that she had begun in Middle-earth, but Melkor had marred. Therefore, leaving the house of Aule and the flowering meads of Valinor, she would come at times and heal the hurts of Melkor. And returning, she would ever urge the Valar to that war with his evil dominion that they must surely wage ere the coming of the first war. And Orome, tamer of beasts, would ride too at whiles in the darkness of the unlit forests. As a mighty hunter, he came with spear and bow, pursuing to the death the monsters and fell creatures of the kingdom of Melkor. And his white horse, Nahar, shone like silver in the shadows. Then the sleeping earth trembled at the feet of his golden hooves, and in the twilight of the world, Orome would sound the Valar Roma, his great horn upon the plains of Arthur, whereat the mountains echoed, and the shadows of evil fled away, and Melkor himself quailed in Ulmo, foreboding the wrath to come. But even as Orome passed, the servants of Melkor would gather again, and the lands were filled with shadows and deceit.
Mouse.
Now all is said concerning the matter of the earth and its rulers in the beginning of days, and ere the world became such as the children of Ilúvatar know. For elves and men are the children of Ilúvatar, and since they understood not fully that theme by which the children entered into the music, none of the Ainur dare to add anything to their fashion. For which reason the Valar are to these kindreds rather their elders and their chieftains than their masters. And if ever in their dealings with elves and men, the Ainur have endeavoured to force them when they would not be guided, seldom has this turned to good, howsoever good the intent. The dealings of the Ainur have indeed been mostly with the elves, for Ilúvatar made them more like in nature to the Ainur, though less in might and stature, whereas to men he gave strange gifts. For it is said that after the departure of the Valar, there was silence, and for an age Ilúvatar sat alone in thought. Then he spoke and said, "Behold, I love the earth, which shall be a mansion for the Quendi and the Atani. But the Quendi shall be the fairest of all earthly creatures, and they shall have and shall conceive and bring forth more beauty than all my children, and they shall have the greater bliss in this world. But to the Atani I will give a new gift. Therefore he will that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world, and should find no rest therein. But they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else. And of their operation everything should be in form and deed completely, and the world fulfilled unto the last and smallest. But Iluvatar knew that men, being set amid the turmoils of the powers of the world, would stray often and would not use their gifts in harmony. And he said, "These two, in their time, shall find that all that they do redounds at the end only to the glory of my work." Yet the elves believe that men are often a grief to Manwë, who knows most of the mind of Iluvatar. For it seems to the elves that men resemble Melkor most of all the Ainur, although he has ever feared and hated them, even those that serve him. It is one with this gift of freedom that the children of men dwell only a short space in the world alive, and are not bound to it, and depart soon, whither the elves know not. Whereas the elves remain until the end of days, and their love of the earth and all the world is more single and more poignant therefore, and as the years lengthen, ever more sorrowful. For the elves die not till the world dies, unless they are slain or waste in grief, and to both these seeming deaths they are subject. Neither does age subdue their strength, unless one grow weary of 10,000 centuries, and dying, they are gathered to the halls of Madnos in Valinor, whence they may, in time, return. But the sons of men die indeed, and leave the world, wherefore they are called the guests, or the strangers. Death is their fate, the gift of Iluvatar, which, as time wears, even the powers shall envy. But Melkor has cast his shadow upon it, and confounded it with darkness, and brought forth evil out of good, and fear out of hope. Yet of old the Valar declared to the elves in Valinor that men shall join in the second music of the Ainur, whereas Iluvatar has not revealed what he purposes for the elves after the world's end, and Melkor has not discovered it. Chapter 2 of Aule and Yavanna. It is told that in the beginning the dwarves were made by Aule for the darkness of Middle-earth. For so greatly did Aule desire the coming of the children, to have learners to whom he could teach his lore and his crafts, that he was unwilling to await the fulfillment of the designs of Iluvatar. And Aule made the dwarves even as they still are, because the forms of the children who were to come were unclear to his mind, and because the power of Melkor was yet over the earth. And he wished, therefore, that they should be strong and unyielding. But fearing that the other Valar might blame his work, he wrought in secret, and he made first the 7 fathers of the dwarves in a hall under the mountains in Middle-earth. Now Iluvatar knew what was done, and in the very hour that Aule's work was complete, and he was pleased, and began to instruct the dwarves in the speech that he had devised for them, Iluvatar spoke to him, and Aule heard his voice and was silent. And the voice of Iluvatar said to him, "Why hast thou done this? Why dost thou attempt a thing which thou knowest is beyond thy power and thy authority? For thou hast from me as a gift thy own being only, and no more, and therefore the creatures of thy hand and mine can live only by that being, moving when thou thinkest to move them, and if thy thought be elsewhere, standing idle. Is that thy desire? Then Aule answered, I did not desire such, lordship. I desired things other than I am, to love and to teach them, so that they too might perceive the beauty of Ea, which thou hast caused to be. For it seems to me that there is great room in Arda for many things that might rejoice in it. Yet it is for the most part empty still, and dumb. And in my impatience I have fallen into folly. Yet the making of things is in my heart, for my own making by thee. And the child of little understanding that makes a play of the deeds of his father may do so without thought of mockery, but because he is the son of his father. But what shall I do now, so that thou be not angry with me forever? As a child, to his father I offer to thee these things, the work of the hand which thou hast made. Do with them what thou wilt, but should I not rather destroy the work of my presumption? Then Aule took up a great hammer to smite the dwarves, and he wept. But Iluvatar had compassion upon Aule and his desire because of his humility, and the dwarves shrank from the hammer and were afraid. And they bowed down their heads and begged for mercy. And the voice of Iluvatar said to Aule, Thy offer I accepted even as it was made. Dost thou not see that these things have now a life of their own and speak with their own voices? Else they would not have flinched from thy blow, nor from any command of thy will. Then Aule cast down his hammer and was glad, and he gave thanks to Iluvatar, saying, May Eru bless my work and amend it. But Iluvatar spoke again and said, Even as I gave being to the thoughts of the Ainur at the beginning of the world, so now I have taken up thy desire and given to it a place therein. But in no other way will I amend thy handiwork. And as thou hast made it, so shall it be. But I will not suffer this, that these should come before the firstborn of my design, nor that thy impatience should be rewarded. They shall sleep now in the darkness under stone, and shall not come forth until the firstborn have awakened upon earth. Until that time, thou and they shall wait, though long it seems. But when the time comes, I will awaken them, and they shall be to thee as children, and often strife shall arise between thine and mine, the children of my adoption and the children of my choice. Then Aule took the 7 fathers of the dwarves and laid them to rest in far sundered places, and he returned to Valinor and waited while the long years lengthened. Since they were to come in the days of the power of Melkor, Aule made the dwarves strong to endure. Therefore, they are stone hard, stubborn, fast in friendship and in enmity. And they suffer toil and hunger and hurt of body more heartily than all other speaking peoples. And they live long, far beyond the span of men, yet not forever. Aforetime it was held among the elves in Middle-earth that dying, the dwarves returned to the earth and the stone of which they were made. Yet that is not their own belief. For they say that Aule, the Maker, whom they call Mahar, cares for them. Mandos in halls set apart, and that he declared to their fathers of old that Iluvatar will hallow them and give them a place among the children in the end. Then their part shall be to serve Aun, and to aid him in the remaking of Arda after the last battle. They say also that the seven fathers of the dwarf return in their own king, bear once more their ancient names, of whom Duarin was the most renowned in after ages, father of that kindred most friendly to the elves, whose mansions were Khazad-dûm. Now, when Aule labored in the making of his rings, he kept his work hidden from the other Valar. But at last he opened his mind to Yavanna and told her of all that had come to pass. Then Yavanna said to him, "There is nothing. Now I see that thy heart rejoiceth, as indeed it may. For thou hast received not only forgiveness, yet because thou hidest this spirit from me until its achievement, thy children will have little love for the things of mine. They will love first the things made by their own hands, as doth their father. They will delve in the earth, and the things that grow and live upon the earth, they will not fear. Many a tree shall feel the bite of their iron without pity." But Aule answered, "That shall also be true of the children of Iluvatar, for they will eat and they will build, and though the things of thy realm have worth in themselves, and would have worth if no children were to come, yet Eru will give them dominion, and they shall use all that they find in Arda, though not by the purpose of Eru, without respect or without gratitude. Not unless Melkor darkened their hearts," said Yavanna. And she was not a people, but grieved in heart, fearing what might be done upon Middle Earth in days to come. Therefore she went before Melkor. She did not betray the counsel of Aule, but she said, "King of Arda, is it true, as Aule hath said to me, that the children, when they come, shall have dominion over all the things of my labour, to do as they will therewith?" "It is true," said Melkor. "But why dost thou ask, for thou hast no need of the teaching of Aule?" Then Yavanna was silent and looked into her own thoughts. And she answered, "Because my heart is anxious, thinking of the days to come. All my works are dear to me. Is it not enough that Melkor should have marred so many? Shall nothing that I have devised be free from the dominion of others? If thou hadst thy will, what wouldst thou reserve? Said Melkor. Of all thy realm, what dost thou hold dearest? All have their worth," said Yavanna, "and each contributes to the worth of the others. But the Kelvar can free or defend themselves, whereas the Olvar that grow cannot. And among these I hold trees dear. Long in the ground, swift shall they be in the hand, and unless they pay toll with fruit upon bough, little more in their passing. So I see what I do. Would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things that have roots, and punish those that wrong them." "This is a strange thought," said Melkor. "Yet it was in the song," said Yavanna. "For while thou wert in the heavens, and with Ulmo built the clouds and poured out the rains, I lifted up the branches of great trees to receive them, and some sang to Iluvatar amid the wind and the rain. Then Manwe sat silent, and the thought of Yavanna that she had put into his heart grew and unfolded, and it was beheld by Iluvatar. Then it seemed to Manwe that the song rose once more about him, and he heeded now many things therein that though he had heard them, he had not heeded before. And at last the vision was renewed, but it was not now remote, for he was himself within it, and yet he saw that all was upheld by the hand of Iluvatar, and the hand entered in, and from it came forth many wonders that had until then been hidden from him in the hearts of the Ainu. Then Manwe awoke, and he went down to Yavanna upon Ezeloa, and he sat beside her beneath the 2 trees. And Manwe said, O Kementai, Eru hath spoken, saying, do then any of the Valar suppose that I did not hear all the song, even the least sound of the least voice? Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Olvar, and some will dwell therein, and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared. For a time, while the firstborn are in their power, and while the secondborn are young. But dost thou not now remember, Kementai, that thy thoughts sang not always alone? Did not thy thought and mine meet also, so that we took
And we have grass. No, puppies. Puppies, no. Lay down.
Also shall come to thee.
But I want grass.
I
don't need grass.
And
But I
before
want
the
grass.
children awake,
No
there
grass.
shall go forth with
But I want
wings
grass.
like the wind.
Oh, grass. I want it to be warm in my room. Oh, see me. Come on.
Yavanna was glad, and she stood up, reaching her arms towards the heavens, and she said, I shall climb the trees of Kementai,
Grass.
that the eagles of the king may
Touch grass.
therein.
Touch grass. Touch the
But Manwe also.
grass.
It seemed that he stood to such a height that his voice came down to Yavanna
I need more
as from
dirt.
the paths of the winds. Nay, he said, only the trees of Aule will be torn up. In the mountains the eagles shall house, and hear the voices of those who call upon us. But in the forests shall walk the shepherds of the trees. Then Manwe and Yavanna parted for that time, and Yavanna returned to Aule, and he was in his smithy pouring molten metal into a mold. There is bountiful, she said. Now let thy children beware, for there shall walk a power in the forests whose wrath they will arouse at their peril. Nonetheless, they will have need of the wood, said Aule, and he went on with his smithy. Chapter 3 of the coming of the elves and the captivity of Malcolm. Through long ages, the Valar dwelt in bliss, in the light of the trees beyond the mountains of Alba. But all your earth lay in a twilight under the stars. while the lamps had shone. Growth began there, which now was checked, because all was again dark. But already the oldest living things had arisen. In the seas the great reeds, and on earth the shadow of great trees. And in the valleys of the night-clad hills there were dark creatures old and strong. To those lands and forests the Valar seldom came, save only Yavanna and Orome. And Yavanna would walk there in the shadows, grieving, because the growth and promise of the spring of Arda was stayed. And she sat asleep upon many things that had arisen in the spring, so that they should not age, but should wait for a time of awakening that yet should be. But in the north, Melkor built his strength, and he slept not, but watched and labored, and the evil things that he had perverted walked abroad. And the dark and slumbering woods were haunted by monsters in shapes of grey. And in Uno he gathered his demons about him, those spirits who first haunted him in the days of his splendor, and became most like him in his corruption. Their hearts were of fire, but they were cloaked in darkness, and terror went before them. They had whips of flame, Balrogs they were named in later days. And in that dark time, Melkor bred many other monsters of diverse shapes and kinds, which long troubled the world. And his realm spread now ever southward over Middle-earth. And Melkor made also a fortress and armory not far from the northwestern shores of the sea, to resist any assault that might come from Valar. That stronghold was commanded by Sauron, lieutenant of Melkor, and it was named Angband. It came to pass that the Valar held council, for they became troubled by the tidings that Yavanna and Orome brought throughout the land. And Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying, the vision of Ilúvatar is brief and soon taken away, so that maybe we cannot guess within a narrow count of days the hour appointed. Yet be sure of this, the hour approaches, and within this age our future shall be, and the children shall live. Shall we then leave the lands of their dwelling desolate and full of evil? Shall they walk in darkness while we have light? Shall they call Melkor Lord while Manwë sits upon Tancredi? And Tolkien cried, nay, let us make war swiftly. Have we not rested from strife over long, and is not our strength now renewed? Shall one alone contest with us forever? But at the bidding of Manwë, and he said, in this age the children of Ilúvatar shall come indeed, but they shall come not yet. Moreover, it is doomed that the firstborn shall come in the darkness, and shall look first upon the stars. Great light shall be for their way. To Varda ever shall they call at noon. Then Varda went forth from the council, and she looked out from the height of Tancredi, and beheld the darkness of Middle-earth, beneath the innumerable stars, faint and far. She began a great labor, greatest of all the works of the Valar since their coming into Arda. She took the silver beads from the vats of Telperion, and therewith she made blue stars, and brighter against the coming of the first day. Wherefore she whose name out of the deeps of time and the labours of Ea was Tintaya, the kingdom, was called after by the elves Elentari, king of the stars, Karni and Yui, Nena and Lumba, Altarinko and Elemir. She wrought in that time, and many other of the ancient stars she gathered together and set the signs in the heavens. Meanwhile, Elemenia, Solomon, Amadima, and Menelnaka with his shining belt, that forebodes the last battle that shall be at the end of days. And high in the north, as a challenge to Melkor, she set the crown of 7 mighty stars to swing. Valakirka, the sickle of the Vala, and sign of deep. It is told that even as Varda ended her labours, and they were long, when first Menelnaka strode up the sky and the blue fire of Penguin flickered in the mists above the borders of the world, in that hour the children of the earth awoke. The firstborn of Ilúvatar, by the starlit year of Cuiviénen, water awakened. They rose from the sleep of Ilúvatar, and while they dwelt yet silent by Cuiviénen, their eyes beheld, first of all things, stars of heaven. Therefore they have ever loved Stardust, and have revered Varda Elementai above all the Valar. In the changes of the world, the shapes of lands and of seas have been broken and remade. Rivers have not kept their courses, neither have mountains remained steadfast. And to Cuiviénen there is no return. But it is said among the elves that it lay far off in the east of Middle-earth and northward, and it was a bay in the inland sea of Helkar. And that sea stood where aforetime the roots of the mountains of Iluin had been before Melkor overthrew it. Many waters flowed down thither from heights in the east, and the first sound that was heard by the elves was the sound of water flowing, and the sound of water falling over stone. Long they dwelt in their first home by the water and the stars, and they walked the earth in wonder, and they began to make speech and to give names to all things that they perceived. Themselves they named the Quendi, signifying those that speak with voices, for as yet they had met no other living things that spoke or sang. And on a time it chanced that Orome rode eastward in his hunting, and he turned north by the shores of Helkar, and passed under the shadows of the Orakarni, the mountains of the east. Then, on a sudden, Nahar set up a great neighing, and stood still. And Orome wondered and sat silent, and it seemed to him that in the quiet of the land under the stars he heard afar off many voices singing. Thus it was that the Valar found at last, as it were by chance, those whom they had so long awaited. And Orome, looking upon the elves, was filled with wonder, as though they were beings sudden and marvellous and unforeseen, for so it shall ever be with the Valar. From without the world, though all things may be forethought in music or foreshown in vision from afar, To those who enter therein into Ea, each in its time shall be met at unawares as something new and unforetold. In the beginning, the elder children of Nuba were stronger and greater than they have since become, but not more fair. For though the beauty of the Quendi in the days of their youth was beyond all other beauty that Iluvatar has caused to be, it has not perished, but lives in the west, and sorrow and wisdom have enriched it. And Orome loved the Quendi, and named them in their own tongue, Eldar, the people, stones. But that name was after borne only by those who followed him upon the westward road. Yet many of the Quendi were filled with dread at his coming, and this was the doing of Melkor. For by after knowledge the wise declare that Melkor, ever watchful, was first aware of the awakening of the Quendi, and sent shadows and evil spirits to spy upon them and waylay them. So it came to pass, some years ere the coming of Orome, that if any of the elves strayed far abroad, alone or few together, they would often vanish and never return. And the Quendi said that the hunter had caught them, and they were afraid. And indeed, the most ancient songs of the elves, of which echoes are remembered still in the west, tell of the shadow shapes that walked in the hills above Kuiviene, or would pass suddenly over the stars, and of the dark rider upon his wild horse that pursued those that wandered to take them and devour them. Now, Melkor greatly hated and feared the riding of Orome, and either he sent indeed his dark servants as riders, or he set lying whispers abroad for the purpose that the Quendi should shun Orome, if ever they should meet. Thus it was that when Nahar neighed and Orome indeed came among them, some of the Quendi hid themselves, and some fled and were lost. But those that had courage and stayed perceived swiftly that the great rider was no shape out of darkness, for the light of Aman was in his face, and all the noblest of the elves were drawn towards him. But of those unhappy ones who were ensnared by Melkor, little is known for certainty. For who of the living has descended into the pits of Utumno, or has explored the darkness of the councils of Melkor? Yet this is held true by the wise of Ersed, that all those of the Quendi who came into the hands of Melkor, ere Utumno was broken, were put there in prison, and by slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved. And thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the Orcs in envy and mockery of the elves, of whom they were afterwards the bitterest foes. For the Orcs had life, and multiplied after the manner of the children of Ilúvatar. And naught that had life of its own, nor the semblance of life, could ever Melkor make since his rebellion in the Ainulindr before the beginning. So say the wise. And deep in their dark hearts, the Orcs loathed the master whom they served in fear, the maker only of their misery. This, it may be, was the vilest deed of Melkor, and the most hateful to Ilúvatar. Orome tarried a while among the Quendi, and then swiftly he rode back over land and sea to Valinor, and brought the tidings to Valinor. And he spoke of the shadows that troubled Kuiviene. Then the Valar rejoiced, and yet they were in doubt amid their joy, and they debated long what counsel it were best to take for the guarding of the Quendi in the shadow of Melkor. Would Oromen return at once to Middle-earth and abode with the elves? Manwë sat long in thought upon Taliquetu, and he sought the counsel of Iluvatar. And coming then down to Valinor, he summoned the Valar to the Ring of Doom, and thither came even Ulrun from the outer sea. Then Manwë said to the Valar, "This is the counsel of Iluvatar in my heart, that we should take up again the mastery of Arda at whatsoever cost, and deliver the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor." Then Tulkas was glad, but Aule was grieved, foreboding the hurts of the world that must come of that strife. But the Valar made ready, and came forth from Aman in strength of war, resolving to assault the fortresses of Melkor and make an end. Never did Melkor forget that this war was made for the sake of the elves, and that they were the cause of his downfall. Yet they had no part in those deeds, and they know little of the riding of the might of the West against the North in the beginning of their days. Melkor met the onset of the Valar in the northwest of Middle-earth, and all that region was much broken. But the first victory of the hosts of the West was swift, and the servants of Melkor fled before them to Uthunno. Then the Valar passed over Middle-earth, and they set a guard over Cuiviene. And thereafter, the Quendi knew nothing of the great battle of the powers, save that the earth shook and groaned beneath them, and the waters were moved, and in the north there were lights as of mighty fires. Long and grievous was the siege of Uthunno, and many battles were fought before its gates, of which naught but the rumour is known to the elves. In that time, the shape of Middle-earth was changed, and the great sea that sundered it from Aman grew wide and deep, and it broke in upon the coasts and made a deep gulf to the southward. Many lesser bays were made between the great gulf and Helcaraxe far in the north, where Middle-earth and Aman came nigh together. Of these, the Bay of Valar was the chief, and into it the mighty river Sirion flowed down from the new raised highlands northwards. Dorthonion and the mountains about Ithrin. The lands of the far north were all made desolate in those days, for there Uthunno was delved exceeding deep, and its pits were filled with fires and with great hosts of the servants of Melkor. But at the last, the gates of Uthunno were broken, and the halls unroofed, and Melkor took refuge in the uttermost pit. Then Tulkas stood forth as champion of the Valar, and wrestled with him, and cast him upon his face, and he was bound with the chain Angaidor that Aule had wrought, and led captive, and the world had peace for a long age. Nonetheless, the Valar did not discover all the mighty vaults and caverns hidden with deceit far under the fortresses of Auron and Uthunno. Many and others were dispersed and fled into the dark, and roamed in the waste places of the world, awaiting a more evil hour. And Sauron they did not find. But when the battle was ended, and from the ruin of the north great clouds arose and hid the stars, the Valar drew Melkor back to Valinor, bound hand and foot and blindfold, and he was brought to the Ring of Doom. There he lay upon his face before the feet of Manwë, and sued for pardon. But his prayer was denied, and he was cast into prison in the fastness of Mandos, whence none can escape, neither Valar, nor elf, nor mortal man. Vast and strong are those halls, and they were built in the west of the land of Aman. There was Melkor, doomed to abide for 3 ages long, before his cause should be tried anew, or he should plead again for pardon. Then again the Valar were gathered in council, and they were divided in debate. For some, and of those Ulmo chief, held that the Quendi should be left free to walk openly in Middle-earth, and with their gifts of skill to order all the lands and heal their hurts. But the most part feared for the Quendi in the dangerous world amid the deceits of the starlit dusk. And they were filled moreover with the love of the beauty of the elves, and desired their fellowship. At the last, therefore, the Valar summoned the Quendi to Valinor, there to be gathered at the knees of the powers in the light of the trees forever. And Mandos broke his silence, saying, "So it is doomed." From this summons came many woes that afterwards befell. For the elves were at first unwilling to hearken to the summons, for they had as yet seen the Valar only in their wrath as they went to war, save Orome alone, and they were filled with dread. Therefore Orome was sent again to them, and he chose from among them ambassadors who should go to Valinor and speak for their people. And these were Ingwe, Finwë, and Elwë, who afterwards were kings. And coming, they were filled with awe by the glory and majesty of the Valar, and desired greatly the light and splendor of the trees. Then Orome brought them back to Cuiviénen, and they spoke before their people, and counseled them to heed the summons of the Valar, and remove into the west. Then befell the first sundering of the elves, for the kindred of Ingwe, and the most part of the kindreds of Finwë and Elwë, were swayed by the words of their lords, and were willing to depart and follow Orome. And these were known ever after as the Eldar, by the name that Orome gave to the elves in the beginning, in their own tongue. But many refused the summons, preferring the starlight and the wide spaces of Middle-earth to the rumour of the trees. And these are the Avari, the unwilling, and they were sundered in that time from the Eldar, and met never again until many ages were past. The Eldar prepared now a great march from their first homes in the east, and they were arrayed in 3 hosts. The smallest host, and the first to set forth, was led by Ingwe, the most high lord of all the elvish race. He entered into Valinor, and sits at the feet of the powers, and all elves revere his name. But he came never back, nor looked again upon the earth. The Vanya were his people. They are the fair elves, the beloved of Manwë and Varda, and few among men have spoken with them. Next came a Noldor, a name of wisdom, the people of Finwë. They are the deep elves, the friends of Aulë, and they are renowned in song, for they fought and labored long and grievously in the northern lands of old. The greatest mountain they lost, and they are named the Aenir, for they carried on the road and were not holy to pass from the dust to the light of Valinor. In water they had great delight, and those that came at last to the western shores were enamored of the sea. The sea elves, therefore, they became in the land of Aman, the Falman, for they made music beside the breaking waves. Two lords they had, for their numbers were great. Elwe Singolo, which signifies grey mantle, and Olwe, his brother. These were the three kindreds of the Eldelir, who, passing at length into the uttermost west in the days of the trees, are called the Calaquendi, elves of the light. But others of the Eldar there were, who set out indeed upon the westward march, became lost on the long road, or turned aside, or lingered on the shores of Middle Earth. And these were for the most part the kindred of the Teleri, as is told hereafter. They dwelt by the sea, or wandered in the woods and mountains of the world, yet their hearts were turned towards the west. Those elves the Calaquendi call the Umanya, since they came never to the land of Aman and the blessed realm. But the Umanya and the Abai alike they call the Morequendi, elves of the darkness, for they never beheld the light that was before the sun and moon. It is told that when the hosts of the Elderir departed from Queen Yemen, Orome rode at their head upon Naha. His white horse shod with gold, and passing northward about the Sea of Helgar, they turned towards the west. Before them, great clouds hung still black in the north above the ruins of war, and the stars in that region were hidden. Then not a few grew afraid and repented and turned back and are forgotten. Long and slow was the march of the Eldar into the west, for the leagues of Middle Earth were uncounted and weird and partless. Nor did the Eldar desire to hasten, for they were filled with wonder at all that they saw, and by many lands and rivers they wished to abide. But though all were yet willing to wander, many feared rather their journey's end than hoped for. Therefore, whenever Orome departed, having at times other matters to do, they returned and went forward no more until he returned to guide them. And it came to pass, after many years of journeying in this manner, that the Eldar took their course through a forest, and they came to a great river, wider than any they had yet seen. And beyond it were mountains whose sharp horns seemed to pierce the realm of the stars. This river, it is said, was even the river which was after called Anduin the Great, and was ever the frontier of the westlands of Middle Earth. But the mountains were the Hithagir, the towers of mist upon the borders of Eriador, yet they were taller and more terrible in those days, and were reared by Melkor to hinder the riding of Orome. Now the Teleri abode long on the east bank of that river, and wished to remain there. But the Vanir and the Noldor passed over, and Orome led them into the passes of the mountains. And when Orome was gone forward, the Teleri looked upon the shadowy heights, and were afraid. Then one arose in the host of Olwe, which was ever the hindmost. Lenwë he was called. He forsook the westward march, and led away a numerous people southwards down the great river, and they passed out of the knowledge of their kin, until long years were past. Those were the Nandor, and they became a people apart, unlike their kin, save that they loved water and dwelt most beside falls and running streams. Greater knowledge they had of living things, tree and herb, bird and beast, than all other elves. In after years, Denethor, son of Nimrod, turned again west at last, and led a part of that people over the mountains into Beleriand, near the rising of the moon. At length, the Vanyar and the Noldor came over Ered Luin, the Blue Mountains, between Eriador and the westernmost land of Middle-earth, which the elves after named Beleriand. And the foremost companies passed over the Vale of Sirion and came down to the shores of the great sea between Drengis and the Bay of Valar. But when they beheld it, great fear came upon them, and many withdrew into the woods and highlands of Beleriand. Then Orome departed and returned to Valinor to seek the counsel of Manwë, and left them. And the host of the Teleri passed over the misty mountains and crossed the wide lands of Eriador, being urged on by Elwë Singler, for he was eager to return to Valinor and the light that he had beheld. And he wished not to be sundered from the Noldor, for he had great friendship with Finwë their lord. Thus, after many years, the Teleri also came at last over Ered Luin into the eastern regions of Beleriand. There they halted and dwelt a while beyond the river Gale. Chapter 4 of Thingol and Melian. Melian was a Maya of the race of the Valar. She dwelt in the gardens of Lorien, and among all his people there were none more beautiful than Melian, nor more wise, nor more skilled in songs of enchantment. It is told that the Valar would leave their works, and the birds of Valinor their mirth, that the bells of Valmar were silent, and the fountains ceased to flow, when at the mingling of the lights Melian sang in love. Nightingales went always with her, and she taught them her song, and she loved the deep shadows of the great trees. She was a king before the world was made to Yavanna herself, and in that time, when the Quendi awoke beside the waters of Cuidiene, she departed from Valinor and came to the hither lands, and there she filled the silence of Middle-earth before the dawn with her voice and the voices of her birds. Now when their journey was near its end, as has been told, the people of the Teleri rested long in East Beleriand, beyond the river Gelion, and at that time many of the Noldor still lay to the westward, in those forests that were afterwards named Neldoreth and Region. Elwë, lord of the Teleri, went often through the great woods to seek out Finwë, his friend, in the dwellings of the Noldor. And it chanced on a time that he came alone to the starlit wood of Nan Elmoth, and there suddenly he heard the song of nightingales. Then an enchantment fell on him, and he stood still, and afar off, beyond the voices of the Lomelindi, he heard the voice of Melian, and it filled all his heart with wonder and desire. He forgot then utterly all his people and all the purposes of his mind, and following the birds under the shadow of the trees, he passed deep into Nan Elmoth and was lost. But he came at last to a glade open to the stars, and there Melian stood, and out of the darkness he looked at her, and the light of Aman was in her face. She spoke no word, but being filled with love, Elwë came to her and took her hand, and straightway a spell was laid on him, so that they stood thus, while long years were measured by the wheeling stars above them. And the trees of Nam Elmoth grew tall and dark before they spoke any word. Thus Elwë's folk who sought him found him not, and Olwë took the kingship of the Teleri and departed, as is told hereafter. Elwë Singular came never again across the sea to Valinor, so long as he lived, and Melian returned not thither while their realm together lasted. But of her there came among both elves and men a strain of the Ainur, who were with Ilúvatar before Ea. In after days he became a king renowned, and his people were all the Eldar of Valeria. The Sindar they were named, the Grey Elves, the Elves of the Twilight, and King Greymantle was he, Elufindor, in the tongue of that land. And Melian was his queen, wiser than any child of Middle-earth, and their hidden halls were in Menegroth, the 1,000 caves in Doriath. Great power Melian lent to Thingol, who was himself great among the Eldar. For he alone of all the Sindar had seen with his own eyes the trees in the day of their flowering. And king though he was of Umanyar, he was not accounted among the Moriquendi, but with the elves of the light, mighty upon Middle-earth. And of the love of Thingol and Melian there came into the world the fairest of all the children of Ilúvatar that was or shall ever be. Chapter 5 of Eldamar and the Princes of the Eldalia. In time, the hosts of the Vanyar and the Noldor came to the last western shores of the Hitherlands. In the north, these shores
Mouse is dressed in a pillow.
after the battle
He's dressed in a pillow.
until in the northernmost parts of Arda, only a narrow sea divided Aman, upon which Valinor was built, from the Hitherlands. But this narrow sea was filled with grinding ice, because of the violence of the frosts of Melkor. Therefore Olwë did not
Woof.
lead the hosts of the Eldalia into the far north, but brought them to the fair lands about the river Sirion, that afterwards were named Beleriand. And from those shores, whence first the Eldar looked in fear and wonder on the sea, there stretched an ocean wide and dark and deep between them and the mountains of Aman. Now Ulmo, by the counsel of the Valar, came to the shores of Middle-earth and spoke with the Eldar who waited there, gazing on the dark waves. But because of his words and the music which he made for them on his horns of shell, their fear of the sea was turned rather to desire. Therefore Ulmo uprooted an island which long had stood alone amid the sea, far from either shore, since the tumults of the fall of Elu. And with the aid of his servants he moved it, as it were a mighty ship, and anchored it in the bay of Valar, into which Sirion poured his water. Then the Vanyar and the Noldor embarked upon that isle, and were drawn over the sea, and came at last to the long shores beneath the mountains of Aman. And they entered Valinor, and were welcomed to its bliss. But the eastern horn of the island, which was deep grounded in the shoals off the mouths of Sirion, was broken asunder and remained behind. And that, it is said, was the Isle of Valar, to which afterwards Ossa often came. But the Teleri remained still in Middle-earth, for they dwelt in East Valerian, far from the sea, and they heard not the summons of Ulmo until too late. And many searched still for Elwë their lord, and without him they were unwilling to depart. But when they learned that Ingwe and Thingwe and their peoples were gone, then many of the Teleri pressed on to the shores of Valerian, and dwelt thereafter near the mouths of Sirion, in longing for their friends that had departed. And they took Olwe, Elwë's brother, to be their king. Long they remained by the coasts of the western sea, and Osse and Wine came to them and befriended them. And Osse instructed them, sitting upon a rock near to the margin of the land, and of him they learned all manner of sea lore and sea music. Thus it came to be that the Teleri, who were from the beginning lovers of water and the fairest singers of all the elves, were after enamored of the seas, and their songs were filled with the sound of waves upon the shore. When many years had passed, Ulmo hearkened to the prayers of the Noldor and of Finwë their king, who grieved at their long sundering from the Teleri, and besought him to bring them to Aman if they would come. And most of them proved now willing indeed, but great was the grief of Ossian when Ulmo returned to the coasts of Valerian to bear them away to Valinor. For his care was for the seas of Middle-earth and the shores of the inner lands, and he was ill-pleased that the voices of the Teleri should be heard no more in his domain. Some he persuaded to remain, and those were the Falafli, the elves of the Falasts, who in after days had dwellings at the havens of Brithombar and Eglares, the first mariners in Middle-earth and the first makers of ships. Círdan, the shipwright, was their lord. The kinsfolk and friends of Elwë Singular also remained in the Netherlands, seeking him yet, though they would fain have departed to Valinor and the light of the trees, if Ulmo and Olwe had been willing to tarry longer. But Olwe would be gone, and at last the main host of the Teleri embarked upon the isle, and Ulmo drew them far away. Then the friends of Elwë were left behind, and they called themselves Eglath, the Forsaken People. They dwelt in the woods and hills of Valerian, rather than by the sea, which filled them with sorrow, but the desire of Aman was ever their heart. But when Elwë awoke from his long trance, he came forth from Nam Elmoth in Melia, and they dwelt thereafter in the woods in the midst of the land. Greatly though he had desired to see again the light of the trees, in the face of Melia he beheld the light of Aman as in an unclouded mirror, and in that light he was content. His people gathered about him in jeer, and they were amazed. For fair and noble as he had been, now he appeared as it were a lord of the manor. His hair as grey silver, tallest of all the children of Ilúvatar, and a high doom was before him. Now Ossian followed after the host of Olwe, and when they were come to the Vale of Eldamar, which is Elvenhome, he called to them, and they knew his voice, and begged Ulmo to stay their voyage. And Ulmo granted their request, and at his bidding Ossian made fast the island and rooted it to the foundations of the sea. Ulmo did this the more readily, for he understood the hearts of the Teleri. And in the council of the Valar, he had spoken against the summons, thinking that it were better for the Quendi to remain in Middle-earth. The Valar were little pleased to learn what he had done, and Finwë grieved when the Teleri came not, and yet more when he learned that Elwë was forsaken, and knew that he should not see him again unless it were in the halls of Mandos. But the island was not moved again, and stood there alone in the Bay of Eldar, and it was called Tol Eressëa, the Lonely Isle. There the Teleri abode as they wished, under the stars of heaven, and yet within sight of Aman and the deathless shore. And by that long sojourn apart in the lonely isle was caused the sundering of their speech from that of the Vanyar and the Noldor. To these the Valar had given a land and a dwelling place, even among the radiant flowers of the tree-lit gardens of Valinor. They longed still at times to see the stars, and therefore a gap was made in the great walls of the Pelori. And there, in a deep valley that ran down to the sea, the Eldar raised a high green hill. Tula, it was called. From the west, the light of the trees fell upon it, and its shadow lay ever eastward. And to the east, towards the Bay of Eldar, and the lonely isle, and the shadowy seas. Then through the Talakiria, the pass of light, the radiance of the blessed realm streamed forth, kindling the dark waves to silver and gold, and it touched the lonely isle, and its western shore grew green and fair. There bloomed the first flowers that ever were east of the mountains of Aman. Upon the crown of Tula, the city of the elves was built, the white walls of terraces of Tirion, and the highest of the towers of that city was the tower of Ingwe, Mindon El Dalieva, whose silver lamp shone far out into the mists of the sea. Few are the ships of mortal men that have seen its slender beam. In Tirion, upon Tula, the Vanyar and the Noldor dwelt long in friendship. And since of all things in Valinor they loved most the White Tree, Yavanna made for them a tree like to a lesser image of Telperion, save that it did not give the light of its own being. Galathilion, it was named in the Sindarin tongue. This tree was planted in the courts beneath the Minden, and there flourished, and its seedlings were many. Of these, one was afterwards planted in Tol Eressëa, and it prospered there, and it was named Celeborn. Thence came in the fullness of time, as is elsewhere told, Nimrod, the white tree of Númenor. Manwë and Barda loved most the Vanya, the fair elves. But the Noldor were beloved of Auril, and he and his people came often among them. Great became their knowledge and their skill, yet even greater was their thirst for more knowledge, and in many things they soon surpassed their teachers. They were changeful in speech, for they had great love of words, and sought ever to find names more fit for all things that they knew or imagined. And it came to pass that the masons of the house of Finwë, quarrying in the hills after stone, for they delighted in the building of high towers, first discovered the earth gems and brought them forth in countless myriads. And they devised tools for the cutting and shaping of gems and carved them in many forms. They hoarded them not, but gave them freely, and by their labor enriched all Valinor. The Noldor afterwards came back to Middle-earth, and this tale tells mostly of their deeds. Therefore the names and kinship of their princes may here be told, in that form which these names later bore in the tongue of the elves of Beleriand. Finwë was king of the Noldor. The sons of Finwë were Feanor and Fingolfin and Finarfin, but the mother of Feanor was Miriel Sarinde, whereas the mother of Fingolfin and Finarfin was Indis of the Valia. Feanor was the mightiest in skill of word and of hand, more learned than his brothers. His spirit burned as a flame. Fingolfin was the strongest, the most steadfast, and the most valiant. Finarfin was the fairest, and the most wise of heart, and afterwards he was a friend of the sons of Olwe, lord of the Kalen, and had to wife Eärwen, the swan maiden of Alqualondë, Olwe's daughter. The 7 sons of Feanor were Maedhros the tall, Maglor the mighty singer, whose voice was heard far over land and sea, Celegorm the fair, and Caranthir the dark, Curufin the crafty, who inherited most of his father's skill of hand, and the youngest, Amroth and Amras, who were twin brothers, alike in mood and face. In later days, they were great hunters in the woods of Middle-earth, and a hunter also was Celegorm, who in Valinor was a friend of Orrery and often followed the Valar's horn. The sons of Fingolfin were Fingon, who was afterwards king of the Noldor in the north of the world, and Turgon, lord of Gondolin. Their sister was Arathel the White. She was younger in the years of the Eldar than her brothers, and when she was grown to full stature and beauty, she was tall and strong, and loved much to ride and hunt in the forests. There she was often in the company of the sons of Feanor, her king, but to none was her heart's love given. Arthadiel, she was called, the White Lady of the Noldor, for she was pale, though her hair was dark, and she was never arrayed but in silver and white. The sons of Finarfin were Finrod the Faithful, who was afterwards named Felagund, Lord of Caves, Orodreth, Angrod, and Egbor. These 4 were as close in friendship with the sons of Fingolfin as though they were all brothers. A sister they had, Galadriel, most beautiful of all the house of Finwë. Her hair was lit with gold, as though it had caught in a mesh the radiance of Lowry. Here must be told how the Kalen came at last to the land of Aman. Through a long age they dwelt in Tol Ereth Fair, but slowly their hearts were changed, and were drawn towards the light that flowed out over the sea to the lonely isle. They were torn between the love of the music of the waves upon their shores, and the desire to see again their kindred and to look upon the splendor of Valinor. But in the end, desire of the light was the stronger. Therefore, Ulmo, submitting to the will of the Valar, sent to them Ossif, their friend, and he, though grieving, brought them the ships. And when their ships were built, he brought them as his parting gift many strong-winged swans. Then the swans drew the white ships of the Teleri through the windless sea, and thus at last, and
He
latest,
stole a
they
block.
came to Aman and the shores
He
of
stole a
Eldor.
glass.
There they dwelt, and if they wished, they could see.
Especially just like, this is my grass.
They could tread the golden
You
streets
can't
of
have
Amra
it.
and
It's
the crystal
mine.
stairs of Tirion upon Tuna, the green hill. But most of all, they sailed in their swift ships on the waters of the Bay of Elvenham, or walked through the waves on the shore with their hair
I was gonna steal my grass.
many jewels the Noldor gave them, opals and diamonds and clean crystals,
He stole
which they
my
strewed upon the
block.
shores and scattered in the pools.
He keeps stealing my blocks. They come in here and steal my block. They stole my block. They only take grass. Why? Nobody knows. Oh, he lost his block. Now he's gonna take another.
And those were made in the likeness of swans, with beaks of gold and eyes of gold and jet. The gate of
There he goes, taking another
was a
block.
church of living rock, sea-carved,
Stole another block.
lay upon the confines of Eldamar, north of the Caledonian.
Of course, he stole a block. And then he lost the block.
As the ages passed, the Vanyar grew to love the land of the
And then
Valar,
he teleported
and
away.
the full light of the trees, and they forsook the city of
How
Tirion.
they stole my blocks?
All about the plains and woods of Valinor.
Fuck you, Enderman! Fuck you!
But the memory
Stealing
of
my blocks.
remained
All my blocks
in
over
the
there
hearts
to
of
do.
the Noldor.
You stole my blocks.
Hills and valleys within sound of the western sea. And though many of them went often about the land of the Valar, making far journeys in search of the secrets of land and water and all living things, yet the peoples of Tuna and Alqualonga drew together in those days.
Oh, just a merge.
Was king in Tirion,
Now she's gonna move next.
but Ingway was ever held the high king of all the elves. He abode there. Boop. Boop. I booped you. I booped you. I boop you. I boop you. Boop 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 boop. Going even to the borders of the dark and the cold shores of the outer sea, seeking the unknown. Often they were guests in the halls
Boop boop beep ba 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 boop boop boop.
went rather to the house of